You have worked hard all your life. You have built, sacrificed, and now you want to give your children everything you never had. But what if I told you that some of the gifts given out of love have destroyed entire generations? Have you ever wondered why some wealthy families collapse in just one generation? Why some heirs waste everything they inherit? Why certain traditions passed down from elders have led to ruin instead of success? What if the very thing you are planning to give your children is the same thing that will cripple them? This is not about depriving your children of love or care. This is about preparing them for the journey of life. Because love is not just giving, it is teaching, it is guiding, it is ensuring that what you leave behind builds them up, not breaks them down. Before we dive into these ancient retirement gifts that have destroyed generations, do this for me: like this video, share it with those who need to hear it, and subscribe if you want more powerful insights into the hidden truths of history, wealth, and legacy. Now, let's uncover the truth. 1. Unearned wealth, the curse of easy riches. You have worked hard for decades. You have built wealth, acquired lands, and secured assets. Now, as retirement settles in, you wish to pass everything down to your children. It is the natural thing to do, or is it? For centuries, the wealth of great families, from emperors to merchants, has been passed from one generation to the next. In ancient societies, elders believed that gifting their fortunes to their children would preserve their legacy. But history has proven something far more sinister. Unearned wealth does not bless, it corrupts. It weakens, it destroys, and in the end, it erases everything you built. Think of the great fallen dynasties. The wealth of the Roman patricians, once the backbone of an empire, became the chains that enslaved their sons to laziness and excess. The Ottoman princes, raised in palaces of gold, became prisoners of their own inheritance, isolated and weak. In China, the Qing aristocrats watched their empire collapse under the weight of indulgence. And in modern times, billionaire heirs squander fortunes, descending into addiction, scandal, and disgrace. Why? Because wealth that is not earned is never truly valued. When a child does not experience struggle, they do not develop strength. When they do not face hardship, they do not learn resilience. The great philosopher Plato warned that a man who inherits power without wisdom will be ruled by his own desires, like a tyrant over a doomed city. Carl Jung called it the curse of the golden child, an individual so protected from suffering that they become fragile, lost, and without purpose. And the psychology behind this is simple: unearned wealth creates false security. It breeds entitlement. It removes the hunger to grow, to fight, to create. What was meant to be a blessing becomes a trap. A child who never learns to build wealth will never understand how to sustain it. They will fear loss, but lack the skills to rebuild. They will expect more, but lack the discipline to produce. And so, history repeats itself. Kingdoms fall. Family names disappear. Bankruptcies increase. And the cycle continues, because elders, blinded by love, forget the greatest lesson of all: true wealth is not gold, nor land, nor property. True wealth is knowledge, wisdom, and the ability to thrive without privilege. So, what should you do instead? Teach your children how to build. Do not give them a fish, teach them to fish. Pass down skills, not just money. Demand that they struggle before they inherit. Ensure that they earn before they receive. Instead of giving them gold, give them discipline. Instead of shielding them from hardship, prepare them for battle. This is your final warning. Do not let your love become their downfall. Do not let your legacy become their curse. If you must leave them anything, leave them with the wisdom to stand on their own. For if you hand them your kingdom without a crown of wisdom, they will burn it to the ground. You have built your wealth. Now, make sure it does not destroy them. 2. Inherited power and authority, the gift that corrupts. You sit in your chair, watching them. Your child. The one you have protected, nurtured, and sacrificed for. The one you swore to give a better life than the one you had. But deep inside, a question haunts you. Will they be ready? Will they honor what you built? Or will they destroy everything with their untested hands? You have seen it before. great men giving their children everything, only to watch them waste it. Kings who passed down their thrones, only for their sons to crumble under the weight of power. Fathers who built empires, only for their children to lose it all in a single generation. And now, in your final years, you stand at the same crossroads. Do you give them everything? Or do you make them prove they are worthy? History has warned us. Inherited power is not a gift, it is a curse. It weakens the hands that receive it because they never had to build it. Rome, once unstoppable, fell not to an enemy, but to weak emperors raised in palaces, blind to the struggles of the people they ruled. The Ottoman princes, locked away in comfort, inherited the throne unprepared, and their empire paid the price. Even in modern times, family dynasties collapse because children inherit authority, but not the wisdom to wield it. Power without struggle creates rulers without strength. It makes them arrogant, reckless, blind to the dangers they will face. Carl Jung once said, "The greatest burden a child can bear is the unlived life of a parent." And yet, parents keep handing down power, thinking it is an act of love, when in truth, it is a slow betrayal. If you give them everything, what will they fight for? If you shield them from struggle, how will they grow strong? If you place a crown upon their head before they have earned it, how will they ever learn to lead? Ancient mystery schools knew this truth well. The Essenes, the Pythagoreans, even the Freemasons, they never passed leadership by blood. Power was given only to those who proved themselves worthy. And this is the mistake you must not make. Do not hand them your throne. Do not place them at the top before they have learned to climb. If you love them, make them earn it. Let them struggle. Let them fail. Let them rise from the ground on their own strength. Only then will they understand the weight of power. Only then will they be ready to carry your name without destroying it. This is your warning. Do not let your love make them weak. Do not let your desire to give them an easy life rob them of the strength to survive. Power should never be inherited. It must be earned. If you give them your throne too easily, you will watch them lose it just as fast. 3. Forced marriage and bloodline arrangements. Have you ever wondered if the love in your family was real? Or was it just a carefully crafted illusion, forced into existence by those who came before you? You sit in your final years, watching your child, the one you swore to protect, to give a future better than your own. And yet, you hold an ancient belief, passed down through generations, that their marriage must serve a purpose greater than love. A marriage that preserves power, wealth, and legacy at all costs. But have you ever stopped to ask, at what cost? For centuries, kings, emperors, and noble families ensured their bloodlines remained pure by forcing their children into arranged unions. It was not about love. It was about power. A carefully planned contract to protect dynasties and secure wealth. But in doing so, they created generations of the broken, the unloved, and the imprisoned. History remembers the tragedies. The royal marriages that birthed betrayals. The secret affairs that led to assassinations. The heirs who became tyrants, not out of strength, but out of the rage of being caged in a life they never chose. Think of the cursed fates of the Habsburgs, whose forced bloodline marriages led to genetic disorders, madness, and the downfall of their empire. Think of Cleopatra, who was forced into royal incest to preserve her family's rule, only to die in ruin. Even in modern times, we see powerful families tying their children to arranged fates, only to watch them crumble under the weight of expectation. Carl Jung once warned us, the greatest tragedy of a child's life is to live out the unlived dreams of their parents. And yet, generation after generation, parents impose a fate that is not their child's to bear. When love is replaced with duty, what happens to the soul? When a child is forced into a bond not of their choosing, what happens to their spirit? Do they become strong? No. They become resentful. They become lost. They become strangers in their own lives, fulfilling a script written by ancestors who are long gone. But you still have a choice. You stand at the crossroads between tradition and wisdom. Between preserving the past or protecting the future. Will you give them the freedom to love? Or will you chain them to a fate that has destroyed countless generations before them? If you truly love them, set them free. Let them choose. Let them live. Because forced marriage is not a gift, it is a curse that echoes through bloodlines, generation after generation, until someone is brave enough to break it. Will that someone be you? For the debt of the ancestors, financial and moral burdens. Tell me, what do you wish to leave behind when you are gone? A blessing? Or a curse? You have worked hard. You have sacrificed. You have endured. And yet, as you near the final chapter of your life, there is something you hold on to, something unseen, yet heavier than gold. The debts of your ancestors. The burdens passed down from those who came before you. And now, without realizing it, you are ready to pass them down again. For centuries, families have carried the weight of their past, financial debts, unresolved feuds, unpaid dues, unfulfilled promises. In some cultures, it was believed that the honor of a family rested in its ability to settle the obligations of the dead. Fathers left their children not only wealth but also their unfinished wars, their unpaid loans, and their moral obligations. Sons inherited not just land but the duty to uphold the pride of generations before them. But do you know what happened to these children? They were crushed under the weight of a past they never chose. History is filled with tragedies of heirs who drowned in their ancestors' unfinished business. Look at the royal families of Europe, children forced into political alliances to repay debts centuries old. Look at the great merchant dynasties, where the second generation lived as prisoners of financial burdens left by their forefathers. Even in modern times, we see children inheriting nothing but the wreckage of failed businesses, unpaid loans, and moral expectations they never agreed to carry. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." But what happens when the power you give your children is shackled to a chain? When instead of freedom, you leave them obligation? Instead of wisdom, you leave them debt? Think of your child. Do they deserve to carry your burdens? To fight battles that were never theirs? To live in the shadow of promises made by ancestors long buried? You must decide. Will you pass down the chains of the past, or will you set your children free? Do not let your final gift be a weight they cannot bear. Let them build their own future, unburdened by the debts of the dead. Because a true legacy is not what you leave behind, but what you free your children from. 5. Family curses and ancestral trauma. Tell me, what have you truly given your children? Wealth? A name? A legacy? Or a burden so heavy that it crushes them before they even begin their own journey? You have carried the weight of your ancestors, their struggles, their sins, their silent pain. But have you ever stopped to wonder, have you passed that same weight on to your children? In ancient times, kings and elders believed that the past should never be forgotten. They told stories of war, betrayal, and suffering, passing down their fears like an inheritance. The wounds of one generation became the chains of the next. And so, without knowing it, a silent curse was born. A curse that did not need words or rituals, only memory. And now, as you near the twilight of your life, you must ask yourself, what have you left behind? Have you freed your children? Or have you imprisoned them in the debts, traumas, and mistakes of those who came before? Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." How many destinies have been shattered because a father's anger became a son's rage? Because a mother's suffering became a daughter's fear? Because an ancestor's failure became an unspoken rule that no one could escape? History has shown us this truth again and again. The families that rose, only to fall under the weight of their own past. The bloodlines cursed by the unresolved pain of their ancestors. Look at the house of Atreus in Greek mythology, generation after generation trapped in a cycle of betrayal, revenge, and ruin. Look at the royal families who passed down not just crowns, but madness. Even today, powerful dynasties struggle, not because of lack of wealth, but because they have inherited something far worse, the broken patterns of those before them. And so I ask you, dear elder, will you break the cycle? Will you free your children from the ghosts of the past? Or will you hand them the same wounds that were handed to you? family curses are not magic. They are choices. They are unspoken rules. They are debts never repaid, grief never healed, lessons never learned. And if you do not break them now, they will outlive you. So, do not leave them the burden of your regrets. Do not demand that they carry the weight of ancestors they never met. Instead, give them the only true inheritance that matters: freedom. The freedom to create a life unchained by the past. The freedom to love without fear. The freedom to be more than what history demands of them. Will you be the one to end the curse? 6. Land without responsibility. Have you ever seen a house abandoned, its walls cracked, its gardens overgrown, its foundation sinking into the earth? What happens when something once valuable is given to hands that do not know its worth? What happens when land, the most sacred inheritance of all, is given without responsibility? You believe you are securing their future by passing down your land. You worked for it, built on it, poured your sweat into it. And now, in your later years, you feel it is time to gift it to your children, believing it will be their blessing. But have you ever asked, will it truly be a gift, or a curse? Ancient rulers, kings, and elders once understood that land was more than just soil, it was a duty. In many civilizations, from Egypt to Rome, from the Mayans to feudal lords, land was given with expectation, an expectation of stewardship, labor, and wisdom. But when land is handed down without instruction, without accountability, it becomes a wasted legacy. History remembers the downfalls of those who inherited great land but never learned how to tend it. Look at the tragic fall of royal dynasties, their lands stripped away by corruption and neglect. Look at the feudal lords of medieval Europe, whose heirs squandered their vast estates in reckless luxury. Even today, we see wealthy families lose everything within a generation, because inheritance without responsibility is no inheritance at all. Plato once said, "The greatest wealth is to live content with little." But what happens when a child is given much without the wisdom to manage it? Does it make them grateful? No. It makes them entitled. It makes them reckless. It makes them careless. They do not know the cost of the land beneath their feet, so they either waste it, or sell it for nothing. And so, you must ask yourself, are you giving your child land, or are you giving them a burden they do not know how to carry? Are you handing them opportunity, or are you setting them up for failure? When land is given without teaching, it becomes a ruin. When inheritance comes without wisdom, it becomes a curse. You still have time to choose. You still have time to teach them the value of work, of stewardship, of building something that lasts. Give them the knowledge before the land. Give them responsibility before the inheritance. Give them wisdom before wealth. Because land without responsibility is not a gift, it is a slow decay, waiting to consume everything you built. Do not let your legacy become dust. Will you leave them land, or will you leave them wisdom? Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe for more insight.